Okay, this is taking a lot longer than I originally had planned. Now we're on about day 4. And it ended up getting cold out again, and I ended up chipping the top of one of my raker teeth, and that got me really frustrated. And it's a bit of a setback. So what I ended up doing is I broke the tip of this one, and I ended up filing down this side in an effort to try and bring that curve back out. And it's not perfect, it's hand filed, but it's still there a little bit. And the way I'm gonna have to correct this even further is when I go to take my gauge and do my final set on my raker teeth, which we'll get to in a little while. In order to match all the raker teeth up perfectly, I'm just gonna have to put this on a low setting as to where because this is going to be the lowest raker tip, I'm going to match this up to where that sits, and then that gauge is going to match up, and I'm going to file down each raker tip so they're uniformly level. Okay, so again, I was thinking about why the tip broke, and obviously it's most likely, well, it could be two things. One contributing factor is because of how old the steel is, and the second reason is because it's cold out. So in an attempt to fix this, what I've come up with is I was going to use a blowtorch to heat it up, but I figured that'd leave well, it's a butane torch, so if I heated this up it'd leave a black residue. So a way I'm going to heat this up gently is I'm going to take that heat gun right there and I'm going to gently heat up the raker teeth as I'm going through them. Now the only downfall to setting this raker gauge a little lower is obviously I'm going to lose some of the swage on my raker tips. Yeah. So I guess worst comes to worst is I'm going to have to file, or when I go to file my cutter teeth, I'm going to have to file these down a little bit further than where the flat spot is. But that can always be done in the future. The way I'm going to analyze is after I finish with my rakers and I go to sharpen my cutter teeth, I can look at the chips, and by looking at the chips you can analyze how your saw is cutting. Okay, so I'm going to start applying even heat throughout both sides of the raker so that they get even heat. You know, no rush here, take your time. Okay, so I have my file gauge for the raker set to depth. I am a little worried that it is on a really low setting, near the lowest setting it can go. But that is in match with the lowest teeth that I ended up chipping. So I really don't have much of a choice. And worst comes to worst, if these rakers are too low, then I could always just file down my cutter teeth a little bit further. So I'll get doing that and I'll get back to you. Quickly again, to iterate what I'm doing, is I'm taking my raker gauge and I'm basically filing down the top of these rakers so that they're all a uniform height. Okay, so I've gotten to the point with this raker tooth that I've filed the top, and now it's time to file the bottom side and just shape that up a little bit. Now, the way that I learned through the manual that I found online, by the way, links in the description, is you take they were taking a, sorry, I'm out of focus here. They were just taking a triangular file and they were gently coming up underneath the tooth. Gently coming up underneath the tooth and just shaving a little bit off to neaten it up. I tried that and it didn't work well. This is a rounded edge, this is a suede edge, and this is a triangular file, and it does not work well. So anyway, what I've found that works exceptionally well, I have a steel chainsaw round file. It's 13 64ths. And what I do is I come underneath the back of the raker. I'm actually going to readjust the camera so you can get a better angle here. So what I do, I come up and I'm gently applying a little pressure backwards in this direction and kind of up, and I slowly go over it, work that up a little bit, not pressing too hard, letting the file do the work. Basically filing it like a chainsaw tooth. And that is razor sharp. I'm going to do that again on this tooth. You can see it. Alright, so I'm going to repeat that again on this tooth. Just again, we're going to come up and back a little bit. Nice gentle strokes. Let the file do the work. And that is absolutely razor sharp. And say if that file does dig in a little bit, which it may around the turn there, what you can do is you can take the file, or you can take a flat file or a triangular file and take the flat edge and just smooth that out again. And there we go. That's good to go. Alright, it definitely got chillier out. Anyway, I finished up with all my raker teeth and I'm on to the cutter teeth. As you can see, compared to these other teeth, they're in really bad shape. Not just from joining, but if you look to the left over here, I just hit that with a file briefly to get a feel for it. But anyway, these were filed pretty rottenly. I know this whole saw was filed rottenly to begin with, but if you take a look at the left side, I really didn't knock anything off. I just scraped some of the rust off. You see how much of an angle this side has been filed, and then the other side just seems to be flat and extended. And that pretty much goes like that throughout the saw. All joining did, it just took the very tip of these cutter teeth off. And just the file job, the person who did the file job before me did an awful job. So anyway, I've gotten these first two teeth done and I think they came out pretty well. You know, there's a little variation. That one went down a little bit further, but you know, no big deal. Overall, they pretty much have the same angle and they're very sharp. Okay, so as you can see, I've started sharpening my cutter teeth. This is a very tricky and diligent process, and it takes a lot of time and patience. Also, when you're filing over your cutter teeth, quite often you'll get a burr along the tip of the cutting edge, and that can give you a false read on how your tooth is being filed. So as you can see, I've done the one on the right, and I'm going to start on the tooth on the left here. It may be backwards in the camera, but that's how it reads to me. So anyway, the way to start this is, to start off, you want to start on an end tooth until you get your bearings straight and you get a feel for it. So I've gotten a feel for it, and I'm going to start doing some of the teeth in the middle as I'm working my way down along the saw. First thing you'll notice is I'm skipping teeth, because every other tooth, it's going to be filed in the opposite direction, and then after I finish sharpening it, we're going to get into setting the teeth. And yeah, so if you take a look at this tooth to start, you can see how poorly it was filed prior to my ownership of the saw. If you look at this tooth, It's very sharp. It has nice angles. It's a proper sharpen. If you look at this tooth on the left here, you can see how steep the angle is on the left side, and then on the right side it's just really flat, and it's just not good. Even though when we were joining the saw, which is a process of making all the teeth uniformly level with each other, even with that, if you look at this tooth, you can see how far to the right where the tip of this would have been. And you can tell that because if you look at how big the flat spot here is and where the center of the tooth was, it was definitely off to this side somewhat, a couple millimeters. But anyway, enough about that. We're bringing this baby back to life. So to start, I'm going to start by working from the bottom up and just try and keep the same angle on both sides. So I'm going to start off working on the bottom. Alright, now this point in time I'm going to start to mention what I was talking about with the burrs and how they can be misleading. This camera focuses. If you look at the cutting tooth, you can see a burr starting to form on the back side of where I'm filing. So the way to remove this and kind of see where your edge is forming, you simply take the file and round it off. I'm just applying a little bit of pressure, and you can see where that started to straighten out a little bit. And then additionally, what I have with me is I have a smaller file, and then what I do after I round out that burr is I come back from the other side and I just scrape that burr off. And I do this continuously throughout. And when I go to flip the saw over to do these other teeth, I'm just going to ensure that I got the burrs off completely off the other side. Okay, for suasion you're going to need a spider gauge. When I purchased my multi-tool, it came with a raker gauge. This specific one is a Simmons. However, you can get a bunch of different makes and they all pretty much do the same thing. So what I need to do now is I need to set these teeth. And basically setting these teeth is when you take the teeth and you offset them just enough so that when you use this gauge, the tip of this is slightly shorter than the rest. So if I put it on a flat block, it has a little bit of rock front and back. So when I set this tooth and I go to shake my gauge, the idea is that the gauge should not move in any direction, side to side or back and forth.